Hi everybody. It forced me to watch Doctor Sleep.
Doctor Sleep.
Well, hardly forced. We said we're going to watch Doctor Sleep, and then you sat down to watch Doctor Sleep.
Well, then you lay on me, and
And you were like, oh
distribute.
no, it's 3 hours. And I was like, we're not watching that non-director's cut. We're not watching Dr. Lethargy.
It was entirely too long.
No.
Let's first cover things like what the film's about, etc. What's a Doctor Sleep? And then we'll talk about opinions. Zara, would you like to give the Cliff Notes?
Sequel to The Shining, the Kubrick version of The Shining, while also being an adaptation of the sequel to the Shining book, which transposes a lot of the Stephen Kinginess that was cut out of the Kubrick version into the Kubrick version, which makes it's rather odd on a creative bit. Like it is like AI was a mixture between Stephen King and Kubrick. This is a mixture between Kubrick and Stephen King. No, see, with Spielberg and Kubrick. This is Kubrick and Stephen King. And it's more successful than AI, but it's definitely a little disjointed and odd, and it's a much bigger story than, you know, the hanging around with hotel ghosts and stuff like that. But fear not, they don't overlook the hotel.
For everyone's knowledge, we watched the director's cut as well, the 3-hour cut.
Yeah.
Okay, now you can give your opinion.
It was too long.
Agreed?
No.
Far too long.
No.
Agreed?
And so much faffing around. That bit that was in the national park could have easily been done in the lead up to the hotel.
There's an awful lot in that film that didn't need to be there.
The book is like longer than 2/3 Lord of the Rings, the novel.
It's a book. It's expected.
It's
much
a
longer.
big Stephen King book. Frankly, getting cut down to 3 hours is good.
Yeah, there's a lot there that didn't need.
The Shining book was cut down. You know, the Kubrick one is 2.5 hours long, roughly, maybe a little bit less. But the book accurate Stephen King version of The Shining is like 6 hours long. The fact that he got this down to 3 hours and it's still being book accurate because it's one of his big books is impressive. It is around the same size and it's like 4 hours.
Structurally, I could have seen how it could have been adapted into multiple films.
Yeah, I'll give it
Maybe
that.
2.
Or a miniseries.
Or a miniseries. I think, yeah, a miniseries would have been
better.
good.
Yeah.
But then book adaptations tend to be better in miniseries, unless you're willing to cut them to death. Unless it's a short
Sure do
book.
that.
Yeah, there's a reason why novellas tend to adapt to film better, just because of length of story.
So,
But-
you liked it.
Yeah, I do like it. I mean, I am a Flana fan.
That
I like
sounds like a medication.
I like Mike Flanagan's work. He's an incredibly skilled director when it comes to horror movies. He's a really frustrated dramatist. He wants to make Oscar drama, and but his skill is horror, and he's okay at the other stuff. It's just pretty funny. He's constantly doing as much dramatic horror as possible.
You've been accusing a lot of directors recently about wanting Oscars.
Everyone wants an Oscar.
No, I'm just saying he desperately wants to do sort of high-end, worthy, you know, heart-wrenching drama, but his skill points happen to be in horror. He likes horror and he's very good at it, but he always puts a lot of drama into the horror, unless he's dealing with like Ouija, the Origin of Evil, or Oculus or something like that. Like the stuff he writes himself, there's a fuckload of drama. And Oculus he did write, but ignore me. He adds a lot of drama to stuff.
You could almost say he's dramatic.
Maybe.
Anyway, we're getting to the spoilers point now. So if anyone hasn't seen this film,
But before we get to that, I want to tell you how I monkey's pawed this into existence. Because after I saw Oculus, I think this might be in the Backseat Critique, I said something along the lines of, I want this guy, I didn't even know it was called Mike Flanagan, that was my first Flana film that I saw. I want this guy to do a sequel to Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining, not Doctor Sleep. I wanted him to go to do a story about Danny, grown up, going into the Overlook and trying to kill the evil using science and his magic powers to do so. Which is basically what happened in Oculus. It's a story of someone trying to kill the evil in a mirror and it fails utterly and, you know, Karen Gillan gets impaled. It's great. Watch Oculus. Then of course, they announced, Mike Flanagan's doing a sequel to The Shining and it's Doctor Sleep. And I was like, oh god damn it! I mean, it's good, but, you know, it could have been better.
Well, clearly you should have shouted louder in that backseat critique so he could have heard you.
It's a monkey's paw thing.
Because he probably would have reacted and done something completely different if he had heard your opinion.
Or maybe they did Dr. No simply because then he wouldn't have to give her credit for the idea.
It's like the fact that I kept yelling about wanting Ralph Ineson to play Doctor Doom in Fantastic Four in the MCU, and then they cast him as Galactus.
You see, now that you've said that, people are going to realise that we've done this on the same day as the Thunderbolts review.
Well, they'll know that because we said at the end of the Thunderbolts review that we were coming back to do this.
True. But for those of you who are not familiar with the story, it follows a grown-up Danny basically discovering that there is another Shine person who's pretty powerful, and then there are these Shine vampires travelling around in Winnebagos with very troubling overtones of Romani culture. Basically,
I think they're meant to be carny folk. I think
Yeah.
I think that's what they were going for. But yeah, they do definitely have the Romany unfortunate implications. Yes.
yeah, they're basically kidnapping kids that have any hint of the Shine, torturing them to
Eat their souls.
Well, I don't
Basically
think it's
visions.
anyone that did any hint of it because the indication is that most people do. They're targeting ones with a very active shine.
yeah.
So they're looking at those diamonds in the rough and targeting them.
I like the implication that they're sucking the Americas dry of people with Shine powers, though.
Therefore explaining
if they're-
America.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, because they've been there for a couple of centuries, it's hinted at. And if they are consuming and killing those who are active in the Shine, therefore it's not passed on.
And it was indicated that they came from Europe, which was the other big bastion before this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's other ones traveling around too. If I remember correctly, in the book, I haven't read the book. I've just read the Wikipedia years ago. That there are other groups who are traveling around different parts of the world, and they've got private fortunes, and they're in contact with each other.
Yeah! Dan at one point says they're rich and they're connected. How the fuck does he know?
He's probably guessing if you're dealing with
Yeah.
people with like vampire mortal things who are killing people and not getting away with it, you can make basic assumptions.
We're also just outward hinting that your old guy was Caesar.
With him, in the book, again, I think he was pre-Roman, but yeah, in this one they definitely hint that he was ancient Roman, but in the book he was like, Beaker people, you know, Proto-Indo-European, that kind of thing. He was much older in the book.
Fair enough. Overall, the story, I could see where they're going with the story. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the overall effects and the way that I read it. But again, it overstayed its welcome. It was too long.
Not long enough.
It was 3 hours. It was
This
too long.
is an area I definitely agree. It was too long, but as a book adaptation for you, there's a lot that could have been cut, and I imagine the non-director's cut would have felt tighter.
Yeah, it's about half an hour less.
Yeah, there's a lot of bits and pieces that could have been reworked, even beyond just cutting, like well, not cutting room floor, but actually scripting, that didn't necessarily need to be given as much room to
For
breathe.
instance,
But the characters would have suffered because of it.
For instance, if I remember right, because the director's cut, I only saw that in the cinema like 5 years ago. I believe the dad just disappears because the whole bit with him, you know, in the end, towards the end of his storyline, that doesn't happen. You know, that's just one element that got cut.
Yeah, lots of little bits. But it had a lot of cool... The director did have fun. There were bits of it where visually they did some interesting shots. Particularly some of the way the camera moved whenever people were in other people's heads was cool. Some really nasty bits where people got injured. The hand, particularly, in the filing cabinet was...
Very visceral.
Yeah, I didn't like that, but I loved it.
It's because they drew it out. That was the main thing that made it so creepy, is the fact that they drew it out and you could see just the injury extending.
And we had that lovely shot where she was pulled out of the head by being thrown through the air, across the country, back into her body and thrown right off the trailer. Looked great.
Yeah. I will say this was something we were talking about while we were watching the film. At the end, Danny is in the Overlook Hotel and he's basically setting a trap for the last psychic vampire lady. And he goes to the gold room, and it's a pretty good homage to The Shining, where Jack is in there talking to the bartender. And he's sitting talking to the bartender, who's supposed to be Jack Nicholson. He calls him Dad, but the bartender denies it's him. My theory is that it's just the house using his father's face.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that Jack Torrance was actively eaten, consumed by the house. The same with the first guy.
Yeah. Basically, that's a very common fan theory that Jack Nicholson's there's basically nothing left of Jack Torrance. All that's left are his bare bits of personality and his appearance.
Yeah, I'm convinced that the thing in the bar was just the house, pulling on memories to manipulate. I forgot his name, Dan. Because he does pretty much the same thing where he's leaning in to those little nitpicks to try and get him to drink again.
And one of the odd things there, you've got like words which sound in the film to be like they're supposed to have importance, but they don't, such as they're calling him pup and talking about your medicine and stuff. Those are important arc words in the book that Kubrick removed. So it's one of the, it shows off how, you know, they're re-injecting the Stephen King dialogue stuff into the thing, and it makes it a weird mix. And the scenes we have, when you have new scenes with people playing old characters, it works far better. Especially the weakest is Henry Thomas as Jack Nicholson, I have to say. Whenever you have him out of focus or like on the side or something where you're not seeing him full on, he's okay-ish. But the ones playing Halloran and the mum are much better. The kids, meh. But whenever you see full-on refilmings of stuff from the previous thing, like, you know, on the staircase or battering the door or, you know, whatever, that's a little bit more obvious and a bit... It doesn't work as well because, you know, we've got the original to directly compare it to.
And you have the juxtaposition of them backing up the same stairs as Jack Nicholson and... I've forgotten her name.
Wendy.
From the first film. It's just a really good parallel because she does the exact same thing. They have the high shot as she has her head down, she has her hands out. It's perfectly mirroring it.
Yeah, lot of mirroring of stuff from the book and the film. It's you don't often get to see a thing that's deliberately melding two very different versions of the same thing into one. And it clearly worked enough that Stephen King liked it and thought it improved retroactively the Kubrick film.
That's what she said anyway.
Yeah, that's apparently what he thought. I mean, he's very supportive of Flanagan. All of his, you know, he's done a bunch of Stephen King adaptations.
Fair enough. Alright, anything else you'd like to add?
I don't have any strong thoughts, to be perfectly honest. It was an enjoyable film, but I'm not a big horror person, so...
This wasn't really that of a horrifying thing.
A horror drama.
Yeah. Regardless.
I also love how we called the end, like, immediately.
About how
they were just going to sick the ghosts on them. It's like we called that as soon as the concept was introduced to the ghosts in the box. We're like, yeah, they're going to use that to solve the problem.
I can't remember if that happened in the book. Someone might get killed by that. Like, if I remember right, most of them get killed like partway through again, but it involves measles and violence. Yeah, they feed off a kid who has measles, and because they're sold they didn't get sort of immunized against measles because they're like really old, so it basically starts killing them too. But
so they wore the world stick.
Yeah. Then they go to the thing. If I remember correctly, Rose gets killed by Jack Torrance's ghost, who's haunting the grounds of the hotel and basically shoves her off a building, off something, and kills her. I think.
So shall we wrap this up?
Yeah, we'll wrap this up because cheese is playing around now. So usual things. If you have anything you'd like to criticise or comment on, add it in a little comment down below. Subscribe, check out the Patreon, check out the Discord, where occasionally this one, and sometimes me, will talk to people.
I do sometimes.
You do. Sorry.
And we have to watch other films. 'Cause now I've got to make you watch, you know, Oculus.
No.
Oculus is great. What do you call her? Starbuck from New Battlestar Galactica's in it.
Don't care.
No.
Don't care.
Okay.
Will a patron kindly request Oculus?
Well, patron kindly feck off and not.
Oh dear. Well, yeah. Anyway, force people to watch this if you want. Even if you don't want to put a comment, just put a comment down there to lament the lack of kittens. Usual things. It helps.
Cat over there.
Yeah, but she's out of shot.
Yeah.
If it's not in frame, it doesn't exist.
Comments encourage cats to be on screen.
Now she's in frame.
And with that, we'll leave it there. Until next time. Bye, everybody.